not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
The Monday Morning Quarterback on the 19th of April 2019 from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. We roll along. Nonetheless, the big news was the Mueller report. It is finally out. It is redacted. Roughly about 33% of it. I've heard from some on the redaction. Incidentally, happy Good Friday to all of those. I remember a gentleman that very early in our career that we worked with, named Melvin Bell. I used to always go to Good Friday services. He was in San Francisco. And happy Passover to all that observe it also. So we've got the various holidays out as we are in this what's traditionally called the Easter weekend, and a happy Easter out there to all of our friends, Carla and company that observe Easter. It is one of the national pastimes. It's much more so in Europe, and particularly in the so-called Eastern Europe, but they actually have Easter holiday is a part of it. Anyway, we've gotten that part out of the way. On to the Mueller report. The Mueller report's very interesting. We read the first volume, and most of the second volume is 40 and something pages. Don't be afraid of that. We'll do a special broadcast. We're dividing our broadcast into the technical presentation, which we will do on the open source report. And we'll also put an edited version of the technical presentation on this station, Boston Red. And we'll do the second part of what they call the second volume of it, which deals with the basic obstruction charges around DJ Trump and his White House, various officials of his campaign and later of his general staff, such as General Flynn, no pun extended there. ended up being indicted. But the problem there, according to the investigative arm of the Mueller report, was although these things were swirling around DJ didn't obstruct, at least not in the legal definition. We'll go over some of the legal definitions in it according to the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. Well, yeah, that is true. A little different situation there. A lot of that, and before grand juries, and incidentally, some of those investigations are still underway. They're not finished. That's some of the redactions there. Others by security problems, national security interests, they call it. Now, in the first report, we'll do the technical report. Some of those redactions are basically involve methods, how they were able to get into encrypted messages, etc., who sent them. Let me finish with the second part here. What's basically happening here, you have the defendant, the focus of the probe, DJ Trump. With all of these things swirling around, he was wanting to fire Mueller, but supposedly his staff would not execute the orders. Therefore, there was not an attempt to obstruct. And also, the people that testified before the grand jury, that accessed investigators, were not prevented by DJ Trump from accessing them. Now, what we don't know at this point in time is if DJ Trump and company, more in DJ Trump involved, and there's much, much more in DJ Trump, convince these people to slant or to set their testimony in such a way as to move away from him and not to a dead center of DJ Trump. Now, also, DJ did not testify in person under oath as Bill Clinton did. Although it was videotaped at the White House, he didn't have to go down to the federal building. But at the same time, basically, DJ Trump's lawyers submitted written answers. What is called in the civil game, or in not necessarily in the criminal game, you wouldn't have this, but the civil game, interrogatories we call them. Well, interrogatories are what attorneys, legal workers, whatever you want to call them, draft for the defendant, or in the case of the plaintiff, usually it's the defendant, but this is a cheaper form of taking a deposition because court reporters are expensive, and in jurisdictions where video types of testimony are recorded, but usually they also want a record. And as a trial attorney, you have to pay for your copy of the testimony. A lot of court reported bills being ran up. In fact, we still got some. Court reporters are long dead, fortunately for us. And for some partners we had along the way. But anyway, that's kind of off the subject a little bit there. Just understanding what's going on. The weakness of these so-called questions answered by the attorneys is that the opposing party does not really have an opportunity to examine the person, or actually cross-examine the person. We'll have an update in this broadcast, and we'll also do a special on the Justine Ruchek Demond trial out in Minnesota. They had the partner there of Noor on the stand, and he basically talked, not skipping around here. Well, let me finish up with this, and we'll get back to Noor and Hannity and those characters there. Anyway, nonetheless, back to Mueller. This situation will mull around for a while, no doubt about it. Committees will access more information from the report. They'll also have Mueller himself coming to testify, no doubt, and they'll go over the report. But the way the report is written, it was not enough evidence to say that he obstructed justice there. Was it collusion? Well, they left some things. He didn't collude, but they left some things an open question, and he'll be asked about that. And this is, they basically said in the report, and we don't get too much in it because we'll do a full report on this, but basically that as the evidence was presented, it was not indictable. The progressive writer out of Brazil, writing on the net in his column, Glenn Ewalt, basically said that there was no fouls in this. Thus, progressives and slash Democrats, whomever, were pushing this, were both pitching and catching at the same time. It was an LBJ expression, I think. So in other words, nothing was accomplished. And in fact, numerous writers have implied that actually DJ Trump benefits in this. No doubt he didn't end up in the dock. So the big question is now, in the Congress, what will the House do about this? The Democrats said they have these committees. They can call people, subpoena records, but they don't want to be on a fishing expedition. And at the same time, they have a legislative agenda to take care of. My advice to them is get the legislative agenda taken care of. It's the big items as quickly as possible. You have a whole another year to take care of the DJ Trump matter. And it's pointed out by other editorial writers, pundits, who knows whom, Moms Mabley's cousin, that basically the way DJ Trump set up his campaign, where some presidents would be subject to lower ratings, with him it's just business as usual. In fact, he welcomes that. It's the whole thing with the border and these various litigations that's going on there. What DJ Trump does is he does something outrageous at the border, like separating little children from their parents and throwing them in detention centers. Now he's got another scheme going on whereby, and this is not the young children with parents that are coming to the border, but these are people that are arrested, and instead of bailing out, they could just be in detention centers. And then another outlandish scheme was just to send these people to so-called sanctuary cities. Example, Seattle, Mayor Durkin there said, well, yeah, we'll make provisions. And they will make provisions. But Seattle also has a very large homeless population. They have made provisions for that. So DJ knows this causes internal problems, and he promotes it. The whole idea is like you're selling soap. The DJ soap. Well, the DJ wants to get his name out there, so the more you talk about his soap, his name is in the news, and people don't forget him. And his followers love this. They're energized by it. And at the same time, his general campaign staff is trying to figure out very clever ruses to get another 3 or 4% of the people in these target states, which is the Midwest, into voting for him. Now, a lot of this is centers around where the economy is or is not. And there's moderate growth out there in the economy. People many people that vote their pocketbooks. He's not as successful, however, in Ohio and some of these places. Many of the automobile companies are downsizing, or they're shifting their manufacturing methodology. All these things play in there. So we'll see how all of this turns out. We'll move away from the Mueller report now. Let me get the other item here. They are sort of related. This is the Justine Ruchek Demont case out in the Midwest city of Minneapolis. the partner of Noor was on the stand, and he basically said and backed up by this whole headline, I guess we'll call it, that they were frightened of being attacked, one should say. So they saw a silhouette in the alley, and he was frightened of that. But there's other testimony there that the alley was well lit by street lights, or alley lights, or what do you want to call them. So there is some discrepancies in what people were in the alley way there. And what Hannity actually said, he grew up incidentally in that part of Minneapolis, an area adjacent to it, and he said, well, he was out and about in alleys and all around the streets all times of the night as a kid. Well, yeah, well, maybe he was. But the whole situation was other people walking through the alley, not unusual. Very, from the description, very quiet neighborhood. They'd had another, what do they call those, welfare check earlier than that. And they went to dinner, whatever they want to call it, lunch, who knows. And then they returned and they got this call. They went through the alley as they normally would, turned off their lights, turned off the computer light. And as they were getting ready to abandon the alley and move on, because nothing was going on there. But you can tell in the testimony that the defense lawyer for Hannity had rehearsed him well in saying that not only the shadow, I want to bring him back to shadow there, anyway, in the alley frightened him, and he was on high alert. There's no indication he was on any high alert, but this is the testimony that came out. And when he went to talk to one of his superiors in the back of the car, it's one of his associates named Lopez, Jesse Lopez. Lopez turned off his body camera, and thus we only saw parts of it. We only saw it. The jury only saw it. We didn't see anything because they didn't have it on closed circuit TV. They didn't have the audio on. In all of these trials, if they don't show video, they show audio, and it would be live streamed, so we could actually be bringing you the actual testimony. Since we don't have a working transcript to work from, we have to work from reporters' impressions. Now, civilians and non-reporters, non-whatever, are in the overflow, and some are in the courtroom. We've not had any, as far as I know, and I'll look when we do the report. I'm not sure when we'll do the report of the rest of this week, but this would be in the this was the third week. I don't have my notes here to comment on this. We'll have more on the week that was, where we can go into more detail on this particular case. But what we're trying to do here is get Hannity's testimony and where he plays in this scenario with where DJ Trump was in the ongoing novel, we'll call it, the Mueller investigation, that basically, we want to say DJ Trump was standing in an alley, but the whole point here is basically the same situation going on, but removed from it. In other words, remotely from it. So thus we get this narrative that's going on in the courtroom that the attorneys have put forward. It's the same as the interrogatories are the written answers from DJ Trump. That was the point I wanted to make, get myself too far off here. That was the point. In other words, both of these things are orchestrated by the attorneys and not by the principal. Hannity in the case of Justine's murder, and DJ Trump in the case of collusion, cover-up, what do you want to call it. The attorneys are writing these, are instructing the person how to testify. So that's why we get that condition. Now, for the defense attorney in that case, for the prosecution in that case, because Harity was their witness, the only way they can cross-examine him, they have to certify him as a hostile witness. And I'm not sure, I have not looked up the Minnesota rules of civil procedure, criminal procedure, exactly how that can be done. Do you have to, usually that is certified early in the trial in a motion if it's your witnesses, in other words, if it's on your witness list. Now, you can you can cross-examine any defense witness, as a defense can cross-examine a prosecution witness. So those are some of the things that go into this, the little legal gymnastics of this. We have our friends from the University of Virginia, that's Larry Sabato's shop, at Charlottesville. Beto O'Rourke was there, and we always pay homage to have her there. Hiya. Anyway, let me clear up a few little things here that are, let me just check out what time. We're doing good. Joe Lunchbox Biden, this is from the Washington Post. We're going to jump around a little bit here. Joe Lunchbox Biden was actually out walking a picket line here. And where was Joe? In Boston. Okay. The shop and stop, but the workers there on strike. Joe Lunchbox Biden was on the picket line and supporting the workers. I know you are used to political speeches, and I'm a politician. I get it. But this is way beyond that. He said this is way beyond. This is way beyond that. This is wrong. This is morally wrong. What's going on around this country? Biden, of course, obviously been a VP, and Stop and Shop is a major chain. The workers walked off the job early this month, saying the company offered for a new contract and increased health care benefits and slash retirement benefits. This is pretty much a cookie cutter action many times. They are members of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, tens of thousands of which are employed by the chain in New England. This is part of New England. He was outside of a store in Dorchester. There should be a Globe article on this. I'll get it for tomorrow. Last week, Elizabeth Warren, another candidate, stopped by the protest line, bringing a box of donuts and borrowing a bullhorn. I have a picture of her doing that. And some of the campaigns already are unionized. San Antonio's Mayor Julian Castro said he would support the rights of campaign workers to unionize. Bernie Sanders has beat him to it, however, and Bernie's campaign workers are now unionized. And he, of course, is on picket lines with Marriott workers on picket lines. Bernie's been on picket lines forever. With Disney workers and Union Maids by Woody Guthrie. Woody's songs, incidentally, are more and more incorporated into Bernie rallies. This Land Is Your Land. Sarah Guthrie, his granddaughter, sings it. We use it liberally here as one of our new banners, period. We're pretty sure he's using this to advantage. Everybody sees that, but that doesn't mean that it can't also help us. That is from Louisa Brendu, a clerk at Shop and Stop, who was handing out small bottles of water to the pickets, but also using this moment, to our advantage. Biden spoke. Union members walked through the crowd, handing out flyers, encouraging people to come and to a mega picket line. That'll be on a Saturday. We'll have more of that tomorrow morning. And Nick Barnes, who works at a nearby Stop and Shop, Peapod delivery service. In the presidential contest, he said he's leaning towards Andrew Yang. That's kind of interesting there. Who wants every American to have a basic income. I believe Joe Biden is doing it for the votes, but any support we can get it. Andrew Yang tends to be more the centrist type voters here, but he is doing the universal basic income that's been around a long time. His name, we used to call it the guaranteed income, Dr. George McGovern, for whom we worked, supported in the 70s, sponsored that, and so did Tricky Dick, but it died when Tricky was in the impeachment process. I was at the Biden left. A small contingent of Stop and Shop pickets were still marching in a circle around the store. So they were there. Joe Biden and from Elsa Axelbank, who led the call and response chant, said Biden's presence was good, but the effects of workers on the picket line mattered more. He wished all candidates who had expressed his solidarity with striking workers would do more than just a speech. Joe Biden has a mailing list, hundreds of thousands of people. He said if he really wanted to help, he would send out an email to his supporters saying not just don't cross the picket line, but telling them to join one. A very good situation there. And let's do the Supreme Court one firstly. And Supreme Court grills for a fight over the citizenship question. That's Trump's citizenship question. He wants to ask people for the first time, are they citizens for the census count? They do it every 10 years, every decade, and it's been doing it for a very, very long time. And what it is a count of all persons, not necessarily citizens, all persons. They just have to be human beings. Can't be livestock or what have you, who knows. But at one time they counted African Americans as 3/5, and the other 2/5, well, they were livestock, chattel. A sign on the front door in a heavy Hispanic neighborhood of the borough of Queens warns law enforcement officers not to enter without a warrant. Its colorful lobby is filled with butterfly-shaped placards made for protests against hardline policies of DJ Trump, fellow New Yorker. They had in the latest fight is to contain the Trump's administration contentious plan to add a citizenship question to 2020 census, which the group calls a racist attempt to intimidate and undercount immigrants. No doubt about that, because you don't have to be a citizen; you just have to be a person. The plan legality would be tested on Tuesday in arguments before the Supreme Court, which has a 5-4 conservative majority. 9 justices will consider whether old Wilbur Ross, who is he's 80, almost 80, whose department includes the Census Bureau, violated the federal law called the Administration Protection Act, been around a very long time, and the U.S. Constitution's mandate to enumerate the nation's population every 10 years. A ruling will end by June when they're over. In Manhattan, Judge Furman ruled against the administration, blocked the use of the question. 2 other courts have also blocked it. The case comes before the court in a pair of lawsuits, one filed by a group of states and localities led by New York State. The other immigration groups, including Make the Road. We have seen lots of anti-immigration rhetoric and lots of attacks on our community. This is just another one in a long line. That's from Theo Ascaro. And made Make the Road deputy director. Opponents have called the question a Republican effort to frighten immigrant households and Latinos from participating in the census, leading to a severe and deliberate undercount, diminishing the electoral representation of Democratic leading areas in Congress, costing federal funds there. The Constitution mandates every 10 years a census. The official count is used to allocate seats in the House of Representatives and distribute more than $800 billion in federal funds. The Trump administration says citizenship questions will yield better data to enforce the Voting Rights Act, which is an absolute lie, which protects eligible voters from discrimination. While only U.S. citizens can vote, non-citizens comprise 7% of the population. A key service that Mex Road provides for adult English language classes, from adult English language class to helping people find health insurance, could be put at risk. Shaskara said Furman found that Ross concealed his true motives for adding the question. The judge said the evidence showed that Ross and his aides convinced the Department of Justice to require a citizenship question, and that he made the decision despite Census Bureau evidence that such a question would lead to a lower count. The administration appealed the case directly to the Supreme Court, bypassing Federal Court of Appeals where they would lose. In a brief to the Justice, the solicitor Noel Francisco argued that the administration's position at the Supreme Court calls the plaintiff's claims a speculative fear that the government itself will act unlawful by using the answer to his, the citizenship question for law enforcement purposes. They've used it before. Francisco called the citizenship question wholly unremarkable and disputes that it would lead to less accurate data. Well, no doubt about that. Because a census worker that is sent out to interview, and they only do a small percentage of that. The survey is weighted. They are mailed. But people would be afraid to answer that they're not citizens, and they could be subject to civil penalties if they said they were citizens and they found not to be. It's packed with the lobby. Oh, this is the Meck Road beehive of activity of mixture of citizens and non-citizens. Let me finish this up here. A number of Republican states' attorney generals, led by Mike Hunter of Oklahoma, backs Trump administration, saying more detailed citizenship data could reduce litigation over race. This is a joke. Based voting rights claims, adding that the immigrants' fear of the question is no reason to grind the census to a halt. So that is it. And let me see. In Alaska, warmest spring on record there in Alaska. More evidence there. The Baroatmospheric Baseline Observatory. That's the northernest most scientific outpost in its fastest warming state. The morning after digging snow to his front door, Thomas checks the preliminary numbers on the observatory's carbon dioxide monitoring on a recent Thursday. It was at 420 parts per million, twice as high as the global pre-industrial average. This man's name is Byron Thomas. Alaska is in the midst of one of the warmest springs the state has ever experienced. That has disrupted the livelihoods and cost of lives. The average temperature for March recorded at the NOAA Observatory, in which was known as the Barrow before. Oh, I see. They've changed the name. Anyway. Nikkovic, didn't pronounce it correctly, when the city voted to go by its traditional name, was 18.6 degrees Fahrenheit above the normal. Fairbanks notched the first consecutive March days when the temperature never dropped below freezing. Icy roads built on ice waterways vital means of transportation in the state have become weak and unreliable. In other words, people used to drive it. At least 5 people have died. I'm going to have to find out how to pronounce this name. Set daily records of 28 on the first 100 days of the year. That's according to the Alaska Climate Research Center. In early February, residents awoke to find that the landfast ice that usually clings to their shores until summer had been swept away by sea winds. So this is very, very dangerous here. 200 miles to the south, Ogira, I suppose. Oggier, a graduate student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, been there, returned this month from conducting field research to find the city completely clear of snow. It was a short-lived snowpack in history. Of course, it's a coastal city. It's always warmer than the rest of Alaska. Historic warm temperatures this spring are linked to vanishing ice on the sea, Bering and Chukchi Sea west of Alaska. And century-old tradition, warm weather threatens subsistence whaling that the Aboriginal people there do around Yukikvik. And that's the North Slope Science Liaison. Anyway, ice forms later and melts early. It leaves the coastlines vulnerable to erosion from fall and spring storms. The same thing's happening in other places, although they're having a flood in the Midwest and places like the Dakotas. This week, 3 family members, including an 11-year-old girl, were killed after crashing through the ice on their way to a small village north of Namatak, which can be reached only by snowmobile, boat, or air. And that is in Alaska. I remember this lady that I knew flew around, scared the hell out of me in a plane, but she was a good pilot. Anyway, so let's go to Professor Sabato. Moving along here. The Trump's primary goal, avoiding a New Hampshire hiccup. Key points. This is by Carl Klondike, the managing editor of the Crystal Ball. Trump remains a huge favorite to win a renomination as the Republican Party's presidential nominee. These are the takeaways. The New Hampshire primary has historically tested the strength of presidential incumbents. This primary, modern history, incumbents who easily win victories went on to renomination. Presidential incumbents in New Hampshire. A modern history. Last week we assessed how a large field of proportional delegates allocation rules and a front-loaded primary calendar might impact the Democratic primary. Such a granular analysis of the Republican presidential primary process does not seem warranted at this time. Well, there's nothing to deal with. They've got old Bill Ware out there, Larry Hogan in Maryland. He's not in the contest. And John Kirsch, he tried last year and failed. Anyway, not much. So actually no big candidate is coming out there. That said, Trump will not be formally unopposed, and one assumes that Ware is a northeasterner out of the Commonwealth, Massachusetts there. Ran as a libertarian. I'm not sure what he is. He used to be a Republican. New Hampshire has a long primary history, and it's zealotly guards its first-in-the-nation status. The Granite State held its first presidential primary in 1916. Over 100 years ago. It's again to lead the nation in 1920. A little less than 100 years ago. Anyway. For instance, the New Hampshire Democrats voted in 1932 elected a slate of delegates that pledged to FDR over one that backed Al Smith. Al Smith was a Democrat from New York, FDR's predecessor as governor of New York. But the primary modern informants really, to go back to 1952, that's when we had I Like Ike running along there. So this is some of what happened there. This is a little bit different here. In 1952, 44%, this is the result there, was to Harry S. Truman. Estes Kefauver, he was from Tennessee. He got 55%, and Harry, re-election, no, he bowed out of the race. I Like Ike in 56, 99% there. He was re-elected. Lyndon Johnson in 1964, 95.3. He was re-elected. In 1968, he got 49.6%. By today's standards, that would not be a big deal. He would have just went on. Eugene McCarthy, the poet, writer, Senate candidate from Minnesota, got 41.9%, and Lyndon Johnson threw in the towel. Tricky Dick, 1972. Pete McCloskey, he was out of California, he got 19.8%, read his book. And also 9.7% was a guy named Ashbrook from Ohio, John Ashbrook. And in 1976, Gerald Ford, 51.1%, and Ronald Reagan came very close at 48.6%, and Gerald Ford did not receive, was not re-elected. Jimmy Carter did him in. Jimmy Carter, 1980. He got 48.8% of the vote. Ted Kennedy, 38.6% of the vote. And Jerry Brown, who at that time ran, the former governor of California, twice over, ran as a to the right of the Senate, 9.9% there. So basically, I guess one could look at it, if Jerry Brown had not been in that race, Jimmy Carter would have won New Hampshire, but he also had the Iran hostage crisis. ABC, the right-wing ABC, ran a deal every night on Nightline, held hostage, and how long they were held hostage. Okay. And 1992, George H.W. Bush got 53.1%, and then right-wing Pat Buchanan, 37.5%, and he was not re-elected. Had very little to do with that. It was a no tax pledge that did him in. Also, a man named Ross Perot out of Dallas, Texas. And Bill Clinton, in a freeway race, was able to eke out a victory and never looked back. In 1996, Bill Clinton, 84.4%. Yes, he was re-elected after being impeached. G.W. Bush, in 2004, after stealing an election in 2000, had 78.8%. Yes, he was re-elected there. And in 2012, Barack Obama, he was 80.8%, and yes, he was re-elected there. So, and they go on to highlight the Democratic primary in 1952. Estes Kefauver was also in charge, if I recall from my political science history there, the Racketeering Committee. He was a progressive, you believe that, out of Tennessee. Al Gore inherited his later in the ball game, so to speak. 4 years later, Tricky Dick won a comfortable victory in New Hampshire. And we already talked about that race there. And let's finish this up. Using history as a rough guide, assuming that Trump doesn't get a more prominent opponent, then be aware. Richard Nixon's 87.9%, that was in 72, represented a reasonable over under for Trump. Let me just make sure that I got it. 67.6. Let me get up here and look at my graphic here again. Tricky Dick, yeah, 67.6%. He'll use it as an over-under for old DJ Trump. Let me make sure this over-under here represents a reasonable over-under for Trump in 2020. Very difficult to say in 2020. The Republicans are gauging basically where DJ Trump goes, and more importantly, where the economy goes. North Carolina, as we start our sports presentation here, women's hoops coach Sylvia Hatchell resigns amidst allegations of berating players and racist remarks. And Ms. Hatchell is sent to the showers one last time. She's been a women's basketball coach in the fall of 2017. A longtime coach grew verbally frustrated with 4 injured players and had them playing. And 3 of these players were recovering from a knee surgery, but Hatchell expressed doubts that they weren't able to play. According to parents, get them out of here, out of my sight. They make me sick. That's berating people. A few minutes later, one of the injured players called her parents in tears and said that the coach had forced her to run sprints, even though she hadn't healed. Her parents said she was re-injured her knee. I was thinking about the injection here, and missed the entire season. Her assistants, like their leader there. And Bubba Cunningham, he is the North Carolina, announced hours after the Washington Post informed about the content of the story. Hatchell decided to resign, the university said, came after an independent investigation. Outside law firm, and more colleges or universities are using this method, found she made racist insensitive comments, but not viewed as a racist. This was some law firm, in a Charlotte-based law firm of Parker, Poe, Adams, and Bernstein. Last month, Cunningham faced a room full of parents outraged at what their daughters had told them about treatment in North Carolina. And according to several people, the meeting in Chapel Hill on the 28th of March. Of course, Cunningham was in Kansas City. Parents recall with horror their daughter describing one teammate trying to play through an injury a few seasons ago, needing injections before every game. That used to happen a lot in the pros. And have her knees drained. Now, that's something you don't want to happen. I've had some fluid on the knee. Fortunately, didn't have to have it drained. It wasn't swollen that badly. In other words, they were able to work it out. But in that case, now there's some problems here. The team's doctor, name is Harry Stanford. In our opinion, he should be discharged and his medical license removed. Bubba Cunningham didn't respond to the story either. Hatchell was enshrined in the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2013. In ranks third all-time wins of women's coaches. Well, she won't be coaching anywhere anymore. In response to an email detailing the allegations against Hatchell, her attorney, Wade Smith, said in a prepared statement, Coach Hatchell has always cared deeply for players. Anyway. In 2017, in the middle of the season, Fuller informed her teammates and the coaching staff her basketball career was over. This is another one of the injured players. Fuller's knees with a pain killer at halftime, but the knee was so swollen. This is one that required to be drained. Now, this is insane. This almost sounds like something out of DJ Trump administration. Hurt versus injury. Berating the 4 injured players at practice, and this is in 2017-2018 season. Later in the process, the players were told their parents that Hatchell told the team they needed to know the difference between being injured and being hurt, and to develop a toughness to play through the latter. Old-time coaches used to do that, but this is the age of social media. No. Anyway, they lost out, didn't make it into the Final Four, and players are exiting, trying to get out as fast as they can. In other words, they're beating it, the old term used to say. Parents know it, however. Now, this was the insensitive. They're going to try to take a rope and string us up and hang us out to dry. In fact, she made that comment there that she could hang someone with a noose. Let me get this comment right here. What are y'all going to do? Come up and shoot my house? Hatchell said to Key, the guard who told her parents. She refused to apologize. Let me get this comment here. Two different players. Okay, the word noose. Okay, and this is the comment here. Bizarre, racially offensive remark she made before the game against Louisville. If they didn't play, they would be hung from a tree with a noose. That's the same comment that Smith made down in Mississippi about she would go to a hanging, a lynching, hanging. Anyway, so this is a story where we get into the sport of the day. We'll go to the NBA first. The 76ers made a statement. This is on 131 to 115 over the Nets. They're back. Somebody was telling me about the 76ers. I hadn't been following them. The Spurs 118 to 108. This is start off of the playoffs. And the Warriors made a statement down in Los Angeles, 132 to 105 over the LA Clippers. On to Major League Baseball. D-backs in Atlanta. D-backs 4-1. The line scored at 10 hits, no errors for the D-backs, and for Atlanta 7 hits and 2 errors. Usually don't win games like that. The Nationals are 4-2 over the Giants in Washington, D.C. The Tigers 9-7 over the White Sox in the Motor City. The Blue Jays beat the Twins at 7-4. The Royals are 6-1 over the Yankees in New York. Line score there: Royals 11 hits, 1 error, and the Yankees just 4 hits. The bats weren't rolling there. In 11. Orioles and Rays 6-5 Orioles over the Rays. Dodgers win 1 in Milwaukee, which is not easy to do. 3-1. The Phillies and Rockies game, but we watched 6-2 Rockies over the Phillies in Denver. The Mariners 11-10, high-scoring game there over the Angels in California. The Reds and Padres in San Diego. Reds 4-1. Now to the hockey playoffs. Hurricanes 2-1 over the Caps. The Blues beat the Winnipeg Jets 3-2. That would be the eastern part of the first round. The western part of the first round. The eastern part was the Hurricanes and the Capitals. The Golden Knights of Las Vegas. This has to be the western part here. And the San Jose Sharks. San Jose Sharks 5-2. And let me see where the series first round, game 5. The Golden Knights of Vegas have it 3-2. Is there deal. And we go to the Eastern situation here. That was Game 5. The Blues lead that series again 3-2. They only need one more out of 7. Or wait a minute. No, actually, I think it's a 7. Yeah, it's a 7-game series. Yeah. Okay, the arithmetic's out of the way. And finally, in the East first round here, who runs? Series is tied 2-2. The Hurricanes and the Capitals, the Washington Capitals, and look and see who the Hurricanes are. Well, see if we get this up here. I don't remember who the Hurricanes were. There's so many new hockey teams out there. Is that the one in Columbus? No, maybe we'll find out if I'm lucky. Maybe we won't find out if I'm unlucky. Nonetheless, tomorrow night we'll have some more beat the Capitals. And even the series 2-2. Oh, Carolina Hurricanes. All right. Anyway, so much for old school here. Thus, Friday Java on the 19th of April 2019, Easter holiday weekend in many parts of the world that are engaged in religiosity. Well, not necessarily religiosity, but are religious. In Europe, a secular place, somewhat more so in what used to be called Eastern Europe, and in parts of the U.S., a big deal in especially cities that have or had large Catholic population. Boston, for example, at one time. Baltimore, Milwaukee, I can think of right off there, etc., across the board. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on the week that was on Saturday morning. We'll have some polling. And Uncle Carl Rove thinks that Bernie could go all the way, or at least all the way in a Democratic primary.